Okay, the session today is really talking a little bit about the politics in America. And I thought it might be useful for some of you to get a little bit of the background about what has been happening and what NASSCOM and the Indian IT industry have been doing. Way back in 2002 really, we as an industry, when we take stock, figured out that there was a potential political storm around the whole issue of outsourcing and offshoring that was likely to arise. It was naturally something that one could foresee, primarily because of the whole dot-com bubble burst and the whole downslide that we began to see in the economy. So as an industry, we went out and engaged a global public relations firm and a lobbying firm to work with NASSCOM and the Indian IT industry. And we ran what I believe is a reasonably successful campaign around the whole issue of offshoring and outsourcing, leading to the highest crescendo levels that we saw in 2004 in the presidential elections. The entire strategy was based on 4 or 5 pillars. Clearly, coming from an Indian perspective, we could only be people that could provide data, that could provide reference material, that could provide some background support, and clearly our customer segment would have to be in front, and our partners. One of the key partners that we had in this whole endeavor that we had was the ITA, and I'm very pleased to introduce at this point in time Phil. Phil is the new president of ITA and chief executive officer. Some of you may be familiar with Harris Miller, who used to be in that position in the past. Harris has been a friend and has been associated with the Indian IT industry, first as an immigration lawyer and then in his ITA capacity for many years. So I'm sure all of you had a chance to meet with him. I'll introduce Phil formally when I hand over. But basically, we ran the campaign with the customers being the front end and our partners, ITA, the US IBC, and various coalitions that were formed. And clearly, the strategy was to focus on the executive branch of the US government, the administration arm of the US government, the think tanks and the policymakers that have an influence in Washington, and then to look at the academic community and see if there was some research that they were doing in this area that could support it, and then obviously the media. We then, of course, have had a reasonably good run in the sense that the economy also picked up, so the issue seems to have gone underground. What is happening now in the United States with the change in both houses and the Democrats taking control and going by the track record of what had happened with the Democrats in terms of the states that they controlled and the various pieces of legislation that we saw, it's very likely that there will be not quite the same crescendo as we've seen in the past, but there'll certainly be pieces of legislation that will come that could have an impact on the way that we've traditionally run our business. Also, what's likely to happen is that as the presidential elections get hotted up and people start to take positions, traditionally leading up to the primaries, you find that people take positions that people want to hear and that are populist. And then when it becomes a 2-horse race, everybody starts to get more reasonable. So one of the challenges that we'll obviously face is what are we likely to see and what are the actions that we can take. So with that sort of a background of the scenario, I think Phil is the right person sitting where he is, a major partner in our effort to try and get the United States to take a more global view of our business. Would be a good time to introduce him. I think IT is very lucky to have someone like Phil. He worked as a key member of Secretary Evans' staff from 2001 to 2005. As we were talking earlier, I said, you spent most of your life on the Hill, and he says, his response was, I wonder if I have any credibility considering the number of jobs that I've done. But if you read his biodata in the books that you have, you'll find that the jobs have one common thread and focus, and that's the focus on the whole area of public policy and public affairs, and centered around, the key 1 square mile of Washington. So the way we'll run this session is I'm going to ask Phil to maybe spend about 20 minutes and give us his view of how the scenario that I've laid out of a little bit of the history and the challenges of the future are going to play out. And then maybe we can have 15, 20 minutes for us to respond as best as we can to concerns or suggestions that any of you may have. So over to you, Phil.
Thank you, Feroz, and let me say that it's a privilege for me to be here, my first visit to India. In my long resume, you'll see the 4 years referenced where I served as Undersecretary of Commerce for Technology, was very involved with the high-tech coordinating group between our two countries, but for different reasons, I always ended up attending those meetings that were in Washington and not getting to come to India, so this is my first visit to see firsthand the miracle that has taken place here. I do want to dive into the subject that has been outlined, but first I want to say just a word of thanks to NASSCOM and acknowledgement of what a great job it has done and an important role it has played in facilitating this incredible growth here in India. And I'm very proud now to be taking over the helm of an organization, ITAA, that has had a long and strong relationship and partnership with NASSCOM. And indeed, I think as it has been alluded to here, that that partnership is going to be called into play again as the public debates in America will require. I think that IT around the world is being recognized as the real driver of economies. We certainly recognize that, I think, in the United States, so though sometimes not quite as much as I wish they would. But certainly here in India, just reading your papers, it's obvious that it's recognized. And so you don't find anyone anymore now who would refer to, at least in America, you don't find anybody who would refer to India as a third world country. Instead now it's a challenger, a competitor, a tiger, someone to be dealt with, as well as a great source of service as well. Dramatic changes, continued growths with the headlines of 9% growth continuing, and now projections about what year will it be when India's GDP surpasses that of the United States. Some pretty heady stuff. Some of the greatest companies now in the world, brands that are known around the world that trace their roots right here to India and their home base here. So congratulations to NASSCOM and to the country as a whole for incredible growth and success. Today, I think it's fair to say that India is known globally for its IT. America is known for many things. It's known for IT and it's known for innovation. It's also known for its movies. So let me steal a line from a movie now that India is recognized worldwide as being the home of so much talent. Borrowing from a hit movie called Spider-Man. With great talent comes great responsibility. And so I think now you find your industry here with great responsibilities, both at home and abroad. At home, it's obvious from listening